So I would like to begin by acknowledging the collections who shared their images with me. So the Gilcrease collection has 118 paintings that were commissioned by Thomas Gilcrease in 1945. These paintings were of structures that were erected before statehood. And so 18 of those structures were in the Cherokee Nation. Also, the Cherokee Heritage Center in Tahlequah shared their images, as well as Mount Holyoke in Massachusetts and Northeastern University. So when the last Cherokee immigrants arrived, approximately 13,000, they joined 3,000 old settlers and 2,000 members of the Treaty Party who had immigrated earlier and established farms and businesses. These new immigrants arrived in an untamed country and had to create farms on land that often had never been cultivated. Sometimes these lands had flint ridges covered with low-growing blackjack trees. Also, there were erratic weather patterns that they were not used to. But it was a beautiful country with rolling hills that were the foothills of the Ozark Mountains and lots of rivers. And most importantly, white settlers had not arrived yet. Not many. So these late immigrants, as well as the ones that were here, were expecting a per capita payment of $250 for each Cherokee family member. But it would take years of a political quagmire with leaders representing all three factions simultaneously negotiating with changing political administrations in Washington before those funds would ever be released. Upon arrival, John Ross immediately began work toward unification of all three factions. On July 1st, 1839, he called a People's Council at the Illinois River Campground. Approximately 2,000 attended, including a small number of old settlers. During that meeting, Ross laid the plans for unity and proposed an act of union. It was signed by Sequoyah and John Looney, representing the old settlers, and John Ross representing the Ross Party. Stan Wading, however, was not in attendance. It was reported that he said he would die first. The People's Council temporarily adjourned in late 1839, but the seeds of unity had been sown toward unification. So when the immigrants arrived, they found two military compounds on Cherokee Land West. So the first one I will talk about is Camp Gibson. It was erected in 1829 as a temporary fortification at Three Forks, where the verdigris and the Grand Neosho enter into the Arkansas. So this area was long used by traders. Sam Houston actually erected the Wigwam Neosho on the Texas Road nearby. And it also attracted a lot of other commercial ventures less desirable. There was a professional horse racing track there. There were licensed gamblers. There were whiskey sellers and brothels. So it was quite a bustling center of activity. It was the farthest military outpost on the western frontier. And at the height of removal, Canton Gibson became the largest garrison in the United States. Chief John Ross, never content with the military presence in the Cherokee Nation, continually called on Congress to close the cantonment. He feared the government would use the garrison for political purposes. He also argued that the Cherokee could enforce their own laws. Moreover, he wanted the garrison removed because of the corruption that surrounded the facility and the influence it had on Cherokee people. The other fortification was Fort Wayne. It was established in 1838 near present-day Watts, Oklahoma, on the border of Arkansas Territory. It was erected during removal to protect the military road, which connected fortifications along the western frontier, and also to act as a buffer for Arkansans as the immigrants crossed their land. Several Cherokee detachments would arrive at Fort Wayne or nearby Beatty's Prairie in 1839. In 1840, due to widespread illness among the recruits, perhaps malaria, I'm not really sure, there were other forts that were moved away from rivers. Fort Wayne was relocated on Spavinaw Creek adjacent to Beatty's Prairie, and it would soon be abandoned by the military. In 1842, the military, no longer needing it, transferred Fort Wayne to the Cherokee Nation. And after its closure, Stan Wadey and his followers used the fort as their base through the post-removal turmoil. It was close to the Arkansas border, to which Stan Wadey and his followers and their families could flee when seeking a safe harbor. During the Civil War, Wadey used the post when forming and training his regiment of Cherokee volunteers. Confederate troops led by Colonel Cooper occupied the fort during the Battle of Fort Wayne in October 1862. However, they were defeated by Union forces. So when the last immigrants arrived, they also found commercial enterprises in Indian Territory. There were salt works, but long before the discovery of oil and natural gas in Indian Territory, salt was the region's most valuable resource. And the Cherokee Nation was rich with underground veins of almost pure salt. Long used by Native American tribes in the region, salt was essential for their existence. It was not only used for consumption, but also for curing meats and preserving food and for tanning hides. And your speaker before talked about all the shipments of hides that had been sent away. So salt was fairly easy to produce. This salt works was established by William, actually in 1815 by Bernard Gillet. He was given a license by William Lovely, who was a Cherokee agent. The salt works was on the bank of the Grand Neosho River, and because it was close to the river, it could be shipped to ports far away. So to invest in this salt works took a lot of money. He had to dig 2 cisterns. He ordered 110 cast iron kettles from Pittsburgh that were shipped on keelboats. Then from Van Buren, Arkansas, they were put in ox-drawn wagons and brought to this location. So he also constructed furnaces and numerous outbuildings. 10 years later, in 1825, August Shoto, agent to the Osage, had obtained title to a salt spring south of his trading post. The springs included a hot geyser that shot water 8 to 10 feet in the air. In 1830, Shoto sold a license to operate the salt works to Sam Houston, who thought it would make him rich. The Cherokee Nation Constitution, adopted in September 1839, however, provided that mineral deposits belonged to the Cherokee Nation. Operators had to be licensed, and that a share of the profits would be paid to the national treasury. The old settlers, some of whom had been operating salt works for many years without a license and paid nothing into the treasury, had to give up their license. On October 30th, 1843, the Cherokee Nation Council enacted an act expropriating all salt works within the nation and had them become national property. All business, regardless of who owned them, were ordered to cease operation, licenses were revoked, and the leases were subsequently sold at auction to the highest bidder. Sam Houston transferred his property to John Rogers, I think a longtime friend, who ran the salt works till 1845. Houston may have remained a silent partner. That's not written in the books. I just assumed that since he had had an initial investment. Rogers called the salt works the Grand Saline. Rogers' operation expanded over the years to where he had 115 kettles. He used slave labor to run the salt works. Salt at that time was selling for about 50 cents to $1 a bushel. Previously, in 1815, when Mule had set up his salt works, it was selling for $25 to $35 a barrel. So, as a commodity, the prices fluctuated depending on how much was available. The reason why it was only bringing $1 a bushel in 1845 is because there had been many more salt works established in the Cherokee Nation. There were salt works on the Illinois and Spavinaw rivers, on Dirty Creek west of Weber Falls. So at any one time there would be 6 to 8 salt works in production. Some of the previous owners filed claims to be reimbursed for the money that they had invested earlier, but there was a very minimal payout for them. Sequoia, however, was one exception. This is Sequoia's cabin on Lee's Creek. It's in Adair County, Oklahoma. It's run and operated by the Oklahoma Historical Society as a historic museum. So Sequoia was an old settler, and he had established a salt works and a blacksmith shop on Lee's Creek. It's just over the Arkansas border. So when all the licenses were revoked by the Cherokee Nation Council in 1843, he was allowed to continue to run his business. Sequoia had been a respected elder because of his invention of a written form of the Cherokee language. He had been able to negotiate agreements with the federal government at the time of removal from Arkansas that protected him in a time like this. So this is the home of Lewis Ross, the brother of John Ross, and one of the wealthiest mixed-blood Cherokees. He was the highest bidder for the Grand Saline Salt Works and agreed to pay $1,600 annually for 10 years for the lease. He built his beautiful home on the location. Lewis Ross was quite a businessman and financier. He served as the paymaster and handled all the finances during the removal. In addition, he served as the Cherokee National treasurer. So he chose this location on the Grand Neosho River because of the business opportunities that it afforded him. Ross established 2 stores in Salina proper and 1 in Tahlequah. So his home was built entirely of bricks made on location by town operators, possibly a business set up by John Ross and his partner Avery Vann. The 3-story brick plantation-style mansion, which did not include the wings on the side initially, was built in 1844. Elements of both federal and Italianate style are reflected in this beautiful home. The narrow front portico spanned both the first and second floors. It was supported by small columns with ornate capitals. At the center front, a gable extended over the porticos. The gable had filigree details serving as ornamentation along the roof line. Wide, expansive leaves supported by carved brackets ran the perimeter of the home. A single entry door, characteristic of the Italianate style, provided entrance to the main floor. The vast plantation surrounding the home, situated on approximately 300 acres, would have included an orchard, gardens, cotton fields, cotton gin, a grist mill, and many other farm buildings associated with running his plantation. Lewis Ross reportedly had over 100 slaves who provided manual labor for the plantation and the salt works. In 1859, while digging an additional cistern to capture salt, Ross's workers accidentally hit oil. They discovered it was the first oil discovered in Indian Territory. Ross made it a commercial venture, of course, and oil flowed at a rate of 100 barrels a day for a year before it was depleted. So other industries were in the Cherokee Nation when the immigrants arrived. Grist mills and sawmills were commercial enterprises in operation because of the abundance of water, which was used for power. Millers not only provided valuable services to farmers, their mills were frequently community gathering places. Sometimes they served as a post office. This is Hildebrand's Mill. It was originally constructed in the Going Snake District about 10 miles west of present-day Silent Springs on Flint Creek. The original mill was constructed in 1845 by Mr. Towers. It was then transferred to Stephen P. Hildebrand, for whom the mill is named today. Hildebrand's Mill was built completely from materials on or near the site. The frame structure was made of timber and supported by 16 by 16 hand-hewn oak joists. The foundation was made of limestone rock found nearby. The grinding burrs were simple pieces of marble, 48 inches in diameter, that were shipped from France. The sawmill had a 36-inch circular saw blade. So during the Civil War in 1863, Union forces occupied Hildebrand's Mill, and it was used to supplement their supply chain. So there have been numerous dramatic episodes of local history that occurred at this mill. It was the oldest surviving grist mill in Oklahoma until 2004, when it collapsed. So fortunately, the Hildebrand Mill Museum Association worked with architects and anthropologists to dismantle and replace it. It is in storage, and they plan to reconstruct it. So the next two slides of Vinson Lackey's paintings are of early missions established in Indian Territory. This one is of Dwight's mission. The Congregationalists established Dwight's mission to serve Cherokees living in Arkansas in 1821. In 1829, it was relocated to its present site north of Sallisaw on the north of Sallisaw, excuse me. The old settlers were living there, and when they relocated, so Dwight's mission moved with them. It was a comprehensive complex. It included a school, church, dormitories, residence for teachers, and other buildings. It opened May 1st, 1830, with 30 pupils. They could have educated more and did grow. During the Civil War, the facility was vandalized. Many of the buildings were burned. In 1882, the Cherokee Nation, or the National Council, reinstituted the school with funds from the Presbyterian Women's Board. It's still operated by the Presbyterian Church today. Another mission was New Spring Place, or sometimes referred to as Oaks Mission. The Moravians, headquartered in North Carolina, had established a mission school at Spring Place, Georgia, before removal. After removal, the mission school was closed and a few of their missionaries moved west. At first, they preached in the homes of small Moravian communities along Barren Fork Creek near Proctor. They eventually established a mission in 1842 near Oaks in the Sailing District, and they called it New Spring Place. So we hear a lot about the post-removal unrest. It was a time when John Ross was negotiating with the federal government. He was working toward unity of all the Cherokee people. And he was also working to establish a government, laws, and courts throughout the Cherokee Nation. As early as September 1839, the Cherokee National Council had adopted an act establishing a judicial Supreme Court. It consisted of 1 Chief Justice and 4 Associate Justices, along with district courts. The Supreme Court did not have a permanent home until 1844, when this building was erected in Tahlequah. So a substantial 2-story structure with a hipped roof and double-sashed windows. It was one of the first buildings made of brick in Indian Territory, and it cost $2,775 to construct. The bricks were manufactured on site, and Cherokee people and slaves provided the labor. It is the oldest surviving building west of the Mississippi, government building. So it housed the Supreme Court and the Tahlequah District Court until 1869, when the new Capitol was completed. Today it is owned by the Cherokee Nation. It is used as a museum on Cherokee law and journalism. So in 1839, the first gatherings of the Cherokee National Council were held out in the open. Soon afterwards, they built a log structure to serve as their council house. Then, in the mid-1840s, they replaced the shelter with a log building. The building was destroyed by Southern forces under General Stanwatie during the Civil War, when internal factions associated with the post-war remains of the male seminary. This is what the area looks like today. It's beautiful. You can see for quite a distance, you can see hills in the distance. So in place of the female seminary, they built this new building. And you can see an architectural shift to Victorian era. So it was constructed in 1888 and opened in 1889. So today it is Northeastern State University. The building is maintained and is a centerpiece of that campus. So in 1903, another building burned, and that was the orphanage that was built in Lewis Ross's home. So after it burned, they moved all the orphans to the asylum and took the patients at the asylum and moved them into the jail. So the asylum became the orphanage. The only thing that remains of the Lewis Ross estate is a spring house, and I believe it's in Salina proper. It is listed on the National Registry of Historic Places. So The asylum was sold in 1914 to the United States government for $5,000. And so it was taken over by the Secretary of Interior, and it was supposed to be restricted for the use of orphan Indian children. And then an act of Congress in 1925 changed the name to Sequoia Orphan Training School. So today it is Sequoia High School. So I wanted to end this presentation, oh, there's the burning of the asylum, sorry. So this is what I wanted to end the presentation today with, and this is the newly remodeled Capitol building in the Cherokee Nation. They've done a marvelous job of removing the paint that had been put on the walls. They replaced the cupola. If you haven't seen it, it's a marvelous place to go visit. And you know, I think it reflects the tenacity of the Cherokee people and the resilience that they've had through the years. And I would like to acknowledge these people for helping me prepare this presentation. Thank you very much.